welcome to On Leading with Greatness. I'm Jim Salvucci of Guidance for Greatness. This week's installment, how to hire as though your workplace depended on it. Think of your worst job interview experience, and I bet I could match it or top it with one of mine from my decades in higher ed. I could regale you with such classic tales as the college president who granted me a 2-hour interview for a vice presidential position while she was delirious with the flu. Or the school that put me through a grueling, all-day screening for a faculty position only to announce at the end that they had always intended to hire an internal candidate. Come to think of it, both interviews were at the same college, 15 years apart. I'm not kidding. I can easily get carried away recounting woeful memories from my own job hunting experience, but I think I will just share some of my hard-won lessons. See, I learned at the knees of the maestros of interviewing ineptitude. From that tortured tutelage, I developed various techniques to ensure others are never subjected to the same. Simply put, I learned from others' mistakes, the negative paradigm in action. And now you too can benefit from the blasted bounty of my job market torment. Let's not worry so much about the nuts and bolts of hiring, though I will cover some of that, and focus more on developing the right mindset, one that goes beyond the fundamental, though overlooked, rule of don't hire jerks. Tragically, the typical hiring attitude is, we've got 20 applicants to weed through to find one winner, which is dead wrong. That elimination mindset is only valid for the most basic initial screening as you determine minimum qualifications. A healthier mindset is to think of yourself not as rejecting the unwanted, but as welcoming future employees. Don't be a remorseless reaper mowing down everything in your path. Be a nurturing cultivator, harvesting the cream of the crop. Such a simple reframing, but it establishes a totally different energy. Here's another crucial mindset shift. Sell your workplace to the candidates as much as they are selling themselves to you. In a healthy culture, this should be easy. Treat the candidates as you treat employees, modeling your values and practices and setting expectations before they are even hired. Your goal? To ensure that every candidate you interview, even those who don't make the cut, walks away thinking, man, that seems like a great place to work. Think of it as starting your onboarding before anyone is actually hired. To do this, you must communicate with the candidates as robustly and transparently as possible at every point in the interview process. Treat job candidates as you would employees, with respect and candor. If you are a decent leader, doing so should be effortless. When I hired for universities, the standard was preliminary phone or video interviews, followed by select on-campus interviews. For the preliminary interview, I used a script that addressed speed bumps from my own job hunting past by thoroughly explaining the process and assuring the interviewee that we would not penalize them for technical glitches. I also made it clear that candidates could request to have questions repeated as needed, and I'd have the interviewers introduce themselves before they spoke so that the candidate did not have to keep track. This thoroughness served 3 purposes. 1. It let candidates focus without worrying about technical shortcomings, such as a poor connection. 2. It immediately modeled our values of compassion, clarity, and integrity. 3. It gave us insight into the candidates because their reaction was an early clue as to whether we were culturally aligned. Most were receptive, but some bristled at the coddling and expressed impatience. If so, they got their wish, an expedited interview. In-person interviews require similar care. At minimum, candidates should always know the process in advance, who they will be meeting, where, and when. Adopt a no surprises rule. Gotcha moments are bullshit. So what questions should you ask? I loved prompts that invited stories about their experience. Tell me about a time when you... There's a saying attributed to Henry Ford that's good to keep in mind. You can't build a reputation on what you're going to do. Ironically, the higher up the ladder, the more people get asked about what they will do rather than their actual past performance, which is one reason so many inept leaders can bullshit their way into positions of power. My favorite closing with finalists was to ask, if you were in my shoes and looking to fill this position, what would be your hesitation in hiring you. Boy, do you get some priceless insights from that one. What questions should you avoid? Well, illegal ones about protected statuses, which you can look up on your own. I often got questions about my national origin, since my doctorate is from the University of Toronto. What was more galling than the fact that the question is illegal was the fact that my resume clearly stated at the top that I am a U.S. citizen. Hadn't they bothered to read it? And you should also skip irrelevant personal queries that can range from the illegal, "Are you pregnant?" to the asinine, "What is your favorite color?" And never ask gotcha questions. You know, the ones designed to corner candidates and make them squirm. If you think gotchas demonstrate how the candidate handles pressure, here's a newsflash. The only thing they prove is you're a jerk. The fitting room. Would you buy a pair of shoes that don't fit because they look slick? I hope not. The same thing with hiring. Fit is paramount. But fit is not code for undue bias and discrimination. As leadership expert John Amici notes, we all have unconscious biases, but the ethical test is whether we act on our biases or not. Building an open, inclusive, and welcoming culture will mitigate such behaviors. Sometimes, though, as with those snazzy shoes, a candidate's resume just looks so good that you're tempted to ignore their poor fit. Try this fitting room test then. Imagine yourself sitting in a meeting 5 years from now. Would you want to see this candidate sitting across the table from you as a colleague? If the answer is yes, that candidate is good to go. If no, or even a vacillating maybe, cut them loose. Viable is desirable. Here's a common practice I banned. Candidate ranking. Listing people as choice 1, choice 2, and so on is misleading because you can't determine the degree of differentiation. In one case, your number 4 candidate could be just a smidgen below your number 1 in quality, while in another, your number 2 may be unacceptable. Numbered scales only give the illusion of precision. I once had a boss who obsessed over candidate rankings, as if anything short of number 1 was subpar. His mindset meant that second and third choices, even ones who became wonderful employees, were irredeemable. What a morale crusher. His ignorant attitude is why I ditched ranking altogether and ended that nonsense. Instead of ranking, try this. Rate candidates as yes, no, or maybe without comparison. Simply ask, would you hire this person if they were the only candidate? That exercise quickly focuses the list on truly viable candidates. Then decide who is your favorite and make an offer. If that falls through, just return to your shortlist without worrying whether you are settling, since they are all viable. How you interview is you. The bottom line is that your interview process should reflect your values and the quality of your culture. The candidate wants to make a good first impression. So should you. By all means, assess qualifications rigorously and make sure you only hire someone who is a good fit, but also assure that your process embodies who you are as a leader and the type of culture you foster. Some hiring gurus push the ruthless use of statistically driven objective criteria as though humans can be studied like petri dish samples. While such metrics have their place, they are only one data input. Humans and their relationships are much more complex than we can capture in a single personality test. So, yes, start with such criteria if you must, but mind the whole person so that you hire the best for the job and the best for your organization. As with all things leadership, successful hiring will come from first tending to yourself. Know your culture, identify your values, and mind your behavior. Manifest the openness, respect, and authenticity of your culture during the hiring process. Be intentional, be present, and be humane. That is how you attract folks who share those qualities and will help your team thrive. What is most important to you when you hire? How satisfied are you with your hiring results? Great leaders know how to build relationships from the outset and get the best people on their teams, and I can help. Unlock the great leader within. Download my free resource, the Transform to Greatness Toolkit, now at thegreatleadershiptoolkit.com. I look forward to hearing from you.